Hello, this is Brian Lawrence with the very first episode of the Selling Bliss podcast with the ultimate first guest, Samantha McKenna. Samantha, how are you?
Good, Brian. I'm so honored to be the first guest. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. And, I think you're the queen of Show Me, You Know Me, which you have back there. You're the founder and CEO of Sam Sales for the what I'm sure will be millions and millions of listeners and viewers. Would you mind telling a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, for the millions of viewers and listeners, I am Sam McKenna. I'm the CEO of #Sam Sales. I've been in enterprise sales for about 15 years. So almost, my entire sales career. I spent a bunch of time as an individual contributor, then as an executive leader, broke a ton of records along the way, broke a lot of records for first woman to do a lot of stuff along the way. And then ultimately got what I thought was my ultimate job offer to go and work for LinkedIn, my holy grail, the technology and company that I breathe and live for every single day. Broke my last record there and then started Sam Sales about 3 years ago. And proud to say we're an all-women team of 13 and then do just about everything under the sun when it comes to sales.
And what does Sam Sales do? I happen to know because one, we connected over LinkedIn, and two, was lucky enough to have you as both a speaker for us at a sales kickoff as well as to do some consulting. But what does Sam Sales do?
You know what, it's interesting. I think a gap in the marketplace that we have is trainers who, one, have been there, done that, et cetera. And then two, that teach the tangible, practical things that we have to do every single day that no one really knows how to do the right way. So think about how to personalize correctly, how to show urgency, how to run a discovery call, how to social sell, how to write a great sales email, what to do when you get ghosted, what to do when somebody says, we're going to get board approval by December 1st, and there's nothing you can do until then to move the deal along. All those tiny little sales levers that we're supposed to be thinking about strategically or at a basic foundational level is one of the things that we teach. We teach a ton on social selling, obviously, given my background and the voice that I have on LinkedIn. I also write sequences for people. We speak at sales kickoffs. We do a ton with LinkedIn Sales Navigator to create MQLs for demand generation managers. What don't we do? And we do
the list goes on.
Executive branding.
You get 13 amazing women together, and there's a whole lot you can do, right?
There's a lot we can do. Yeah, that's us in a nutshell, though.
Okay. So let's start with Show Me, You Know Me, which is one of my favorite things. It is something I preach to our SDRs and to our AEs, basically to everyone in our sales org. But can you tell us a little what that entails and where you've had the success with it?
I think so. This is something I've been talking about probably for a decade, right? And how do we show up prepared for calls when we're meeting with our prospects? Do we know who they are? Do we know what they do? Do we know what they care about as their specific title, their buyer persona? How do we also think about this with outbound emails, right? When we send an email, let's say I am sending an email to you, Brian. If I just say like world-class sales training in the subject line, and then I say, hope this finds you doing well, odds are pretty slim that you're going to open up that email. So what can we do to show that buyer, even in the subject line, that we've done some research, we know something about them, we're pulling a quote from a recent podcast they were on? How do we show them that we know them, that we've done that homework? The concept of it, right, what I love so much is that whether you are emailing somebody for the very first time or they've been a client of yours for 10 years, right, that Show Me, You Know Me leads through every part of our sales cycle for however long we work with somebody, no matter where they work, where they accelerate, or how they change jobs.
One of the trends we've seen since you and I both started in sales is that there's so much more automation and templated emails. There's amazing tools like Outreach and SalesLoft, and so everyone talks about cadences. How do you think about Show Me, You Know Me in a cadence-driven world, and does that mean everything's custom written, or how do you combine the two?
I think there is only so much time of the day, right? So we have to find a happy medium. But I'll tell you something that I'm sure will shock everybody. If you take the time to instead think about thoughtful quality in the emails that you send instead of quantity, I promise you, you will not only win, right? You'll get more opens, more replies, but you'll probably get them from higher level executives as well. because you are doing something different than what everybody else does. That's probably one of the most common threads we talk about at Sam Sales. It's not about, making an extra 100 calls or pulling an extra 10 hours. It's about being different at what you do. So that quality, right, and doing that show me, you know me is a key of being different. So how do we do that with the sales cadences and sequences and outreaches of the world? To me, right, 85% of those cadences should be pre-written. They should be authorized, approved by an internal team. They should be written by someone like us or other experts out there that exist that are fantastic and really understand the data and the flow and all of that. But that 10 to 15%, that first email, that's where that email should be a manual email, right? Where you can go in, you can allow your BDRs, your AEs, your whomever to edit that email, to create a custom subject line, and to then tie an authentic note to that show me, you know me in that first email. Everything else from there should be pre-written and it should be buyer persona specific. I will also say there, right? Think about this for your organizations. If you have had salespeople write your email, if you've had it written by sales enablement, if you've had marketing write it, worst of all, I love marketing. We have a very different voice, sales and marketing. Think about this, like that's where you have a rewrite, right? That's needed, because if everybody's writing their own stuff, then it's wild, wild west. You have absolutely no idea what's being successful and why. We have no way to track that. And then if you have sales enablement who doesn't quite understand how funnels work, right? And how that content should be written, got another problem. And then again, marketing is going to tell our buyers what we do, not why they should care about what we do, which is exactly what those sequences should say.
And so being able to tie those all, because it's true, everyone wants their hand and everyone has their opinions. And so what do you see for the successful organizations? How do they kind of get that buy off and tie that all together? What's the best practice you're seeing there?
So think about this. We have been only around for about 3 years, right? We've amassed 160 clients in that time. And I would say we've probably rewritten the sequences for about a quarter of those clients. It's a lot of sequences to rewrite. But I think to me, what ties this all together is one, starting with a sequence or a series of sequences that are going to be our test sequences. So let's put those out there and let's start to track the data, right? When do we get an open? When do we get a response? When do we get I would love to meet, right? Let's look at those across all of our sequences and let's start to put those things together. Because if, let's say, test A is getting a response at email 7 and test B that we're using, right, and that A/B testing is getting a response at email 3, why? What do those things say? What challenge did they solve? Can we put those together? Can we eventually start to kind of Tetris these sequences together into the ultimate sequence for that buyer persona? And that's where I think our strategy kind of gets lost, right? Because we put these things together, we start to create hundreds, if not thousands of sequences, and we just keep hoping instead of saying, we're going to be strategic. The other thing that I would say, right, is think about this again. Your email should talk about what Brian cares about, right? So if I'm emailing Brian and I just talk about what we do, and then I just leave it there, right? Unless Brian has a bleeding challenge that he's looking to get a solution for, he's probably not going to email me, right? He's not going to respond. Why? Because what I'm talking to him about is something that he might be a passive buyer for, he might be a eventual buyer for, but it's not something where I can solve a challenge for him right now. So I have to think about that in those sequences, right? That's also what we see misses. It's that buyer persona specificity. Let me give you one quick example. For you guys listening, if I was going to sell something to Brian and I wanted to get his attention, and I said, we can train your teams on how to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. When I do that, I have to not only think why you would care about that, but the other thing that I've got to think about is what the hidden or forthcoming objection is. So number one, Brian might say, we kind of know how to use it. And number two, he might say, if we need training, we'll call our CSM. So we've got to think of how to get around that. And so one of the things I can say is, number one, let's train you on the things that your CSM doesn't know how to train you on, which is how to use this platform to sell. And here's a quick example of that. Your existing clients, your transition clients are your best lead sources. If you're not surfacing in a process-driven way who all of your clients are and how they're changing jobs or leaving so much money on the table in terms of MQLs, we can help you create a brand new source of pipeline, especially right now when everybody's worried about pipeline in this economic climate. And say a little bit more succinctly than I did right off the cuff, but I've got to think about the things that Brian specifically cares about and think about those objections so that I up the odds that he's going to respond to my email.
So Sam, what I love about that is you're talking about the fact that, I think so many reps, they know there might be objections and they're hoping to skate by them. And instead what you're saying is, hey, let's take those on, bring them up ourselves. Let's be proactive and put those out on the table and say, hey, you might be thinking about using your LinkedIn CSM, but here's why you should be using us instead. Is that what you're suggesting? And that's what you're seeing?
Completely, right? And I think that that's what really gets us over the mark, because that person, right, again, like if I say that to you, Brian, and that's exactly what you think, and then you see that I nail that objection head on, you're going to be like, oh, what? Wait, that's exactly what I was thinking. Well, now why wouldn't we use our CSM, right? Like, I can see what she's saying. Let me now respond to that email and then get a little bit more information, because there's probably something I'm missing. But if we simply say we can train your teams, that's just what we do, right? There's nothing about that that's solving a specific challenge for you, Brian, or that's showing how we're different, right, than whatever it is you might already be using, the incumbent, whatever. Well, I think the other thing to consider here, right, is when we talk about that, we not only don't even think about the objections, but we think if there is an objection, well, they'll let us know, and then we can combat it.
Right.
Let me tell you, right, Brian, you probably get 10, 15, 20 sales emails a day, a week, whatever. If you responded to every single one of those with an objection, you'd have no more time in the day to do your own job.
Yep.
So we know you're not going to respond. It's our job to get around that before you ever even do.
Yeah. And I think about that the same way with competitors, that, often you'll find sales reps don't want to bring up, they don't ask about competitors because they think maybe they're not looking at anybody. And if I somehow ask the question, that they're going to think, wow, there are other providers out there. And I like to say that, I like to work with smart customers. So I'm going to assume they know we're not the only e-signature or document workflow vendor. What do you think in that? And how do you see like the competition? Is that a hidden landmine, or how do you handle that?
I think the sooner you bring up the competition, the better, right? And I think one is asking, tell us a little bit about who else you're considering, right? In this day and age, we know that everybody considers multiple vendors. Could you share with us a little bit about who you're considering? And you're not always going to get people who are going to be forthright with that, right? Like, you probably also have a few immature buyers who are going to be like, well, we can't disclose that, instead of being like, yeah, here's who we're considering. Right. Tell us what you know about them. So if you are a buyer, I would tell you, be forthcoming with that information. I want to know what I don't already know about that person. The other thing that I would say, right, is when you can, let's say they don't give you your competitors, you can say, here's a couple of things to keep in mind, right? So common competitors that we get are these two other vendors. Here's a little bit about how we're different, right? Particularly with what you said was really important too. Here's how we can hit the mark. We get this a lot where people say we're considering, two other consultants other than Sam Sales. And we can say one core differentiator we have is we're an all-women team, right? And the others that you're looking at are all male and are all men team. And while that may not be a huge thing, it's then our job to connect the dots on why that matters. Think about how many women sellers you have on your team and how often we get the same old person that's coming to train us, and how refreshing it is to get a super enthusiastic, overly enthusiastic, annoyingly enthusiastic woman trainer to come and train your teams. So that's the other thing I was just going to say there, right? A lot of the times we talk about on our calls features, we talk about benefits, and we miss so what. So exactly what I just said here, right? Like when we talk about our competition, we raise it and we talk about how we're different. Don't forget that so what? Why does it matter to them? Because if we think if we assume that they're just going to know what it is, again, we'll miss the mark there. So bring them up early, talk about, right, in a very positive way. Do not throw your competitors under the bus. Talk about your differentiators, and then think, why does that matter? Why does that buyer care?
And do you find that by doing that, you also help select out people who aren't a fit? I mean, I know it's 2022, but maybe there are some organizations, and I wouldn't want to do business with them, but maybe they don't want an all-female company. But would you rather know that up front, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the differentiators for us, right? Like, it's also a great way to qualify or disqualify that opportunity. And let's even think about it like figuring out who our competition is from a pricing perspective. So years ago, I sold a technology called On24, which is still out there and fantastic. The most expensive, probably, demand gen webinar platform that exists. And we would go up against the WebExes of the world. So we would sell a webinar for $3,400, and WebEx would sell it unlimited for $99 a month. So how do we compete against that? But how we compete against that is a different story. If that's our competition, right? If we're selling a Ferrari and someone's like, it's you or Prius, we're like, slightly different, right?
Yeah.
Completely. So finding that out, right? What is it about them that's attracting you? Like, why are they even a competitor? We're miles apart from each other. So we want to make sure that the criteria that you're using to make those decisions or to bring on a vendor are ones that we fit into and that we're strong, because if it is a price comparison, if it isn't all you can eat, that's not us. And we can at least give you some candid feedback on those other competitors so you can make a more educated decision, even if you don't use us. And let me just mention that too, right? If I am talking to Brian, right, and you decide you're going to go with something, let's say I sell a software platform, you go something totally inexpensive. I have such an awesome opportunity to build a relationship with you by saying, let me tell you a few of the parameters of the other technologies you're looking at that you might not have heard or considered yet, or things that we know that they sell to as advantages that actually aren't advantages. So if I take 10 minutes, right, to tell you that, when I have zero to gain from it because I've now disqualified you, that we're not going to be the right fit for you, think of what that can do long term. Think of what you, Brian, or our buyers, right, happens when they change jobs. They have more money. They need a more sophisticated platform. They're going to call us.
First call. There you go. And Sam, let's shift a little. I mean, you and I both have been through challenging times in sales and seen some tough environments. But for many people today, someone who started in sales 10 years ago, they started in 2012. It's been a really great market for AEs and for people in sales. And so if they weren't happy at one company, no problem. They got 3 more to choose from and they hop over there. And now we're seeing tech layoffs, and there's a pretty good chance more are to come. And so you've got some people who, for the first time, they are conducting what I think is the biggest sale of the next 2 or 3 years from themselves, which is they're selling themselves. They're needing to find that next job. What advice do you have for them, and what are you seeing out there in the market right now?
I would say first, if you are not in this position yet, that you are worried that you might be, right, at any period of time, remember that it's so cliche to say, but your network is your net worth. It really is. I think even when we as hiring managers look for people that we want to hire, we don't throw something up on Indeed.com. We go to the people that we know. We know to go to recruiters. We throw up something in a Slack channel. We ask and say, this is what I'm looking for. Who do you know? So you building and maintaining those relationships is everything. You taking 10 minutes to give Brian advice when you can't sell to him, and then you lose your job and can go back and say, do you happen to know anyone hiring? You know what it's like to work with me as a salesperson. Do you know anybody hiring? Right? All of that stuff really pays off for the long game. So think about that. If you are in this position, I would tell you, make sure, one, post on social about it. Don't be ashamed of your being laid off. I have been laid off. Brian, you might have been in that same position, right?
Been there. Yep.
Been there, right? And I think it is demoralizing. I will say when that happens, you're like, how could this possibly happen to me? But the best of the best have been there. So don't worry, you're not alone. Post, right? Throw your open to work on there. Talk about make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date. If you are like, cool, what does that mean? 2 things. One, Google #SamSales plus LinkedIn profile plus about section on LinkedIn. You'll find tons of free stuff. If you can't find it and you want a more educated experience, go to our website, shorts.samsalesconsulting.com. You can find all of our trainings there to beef up your profile, get tons of negotiating advice, how to interview better, etc. No matter what position you're in, right, when you are interviewing for a job, one thing I would tell you to use to stand out, I just posted about this last week, is DM the hiring manager, connect with that hiring manager. How you do it is really important though. So if you can find the hiring manager, let's say it was Brian, send Brian an email and say, hey, Brian, I applied for one of your open roles, really hoping that my resume stands out and that I get the chance to interview. If I can do anything else to provide value or my information about my background, please don't hesitate to ask. And saying, hey, I applied. And then B, I'm also making sure that I'm not asking for anything. Because if I say, Brian, do you have some time to catch up? And let me ask you about my interview, possibility, Brian's, yeah, exactly. No shot in hell.
Yeah.
Because everyone, yeah.
Right.
But nobody does that on LinkedIn. I think
they don't.
No, right? Have you ever gotten that as a hiring individual? Have you ever gotten
You know what? I have. I have, and he works for me today. His name's Kurt. Yeah. He's one of our SDRs, and he did a great job. And I just absolutely loved it. And he did that direct reach out. And my feeling on that is if you were applying for a job somewhere and they had a negative reaction to someone doing exactly what you described, not asking, hey, can I have half an hour of your time, but just, hey, I'm applying. I'm super excited about working at Airslate. I'm super excited about working at Sam Sales. Hey, I saw that FSU just destroyed University of Miami over the weekend. Any of those pertinent show me you know me things, and added some value. But hey, I'm super excited about going through the process. If someone did that and it was a negative reaction, as much as I want, I might be in need of a job, that would be a huge red flag saying, hey, do I really want to work somewhere? Is this, because what sort of sales culture is that if they frown upon someone, selling themselves during the process, right?
We talk about that all the time, like the all sorts of things in the interview process, red flags for figuring out this is a company that you want to work for. I think that's a great one. I would say too, one more just skill set to think about, again, whatever position you're in, is think about social selling. We are seeing this left and right, that people are like, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody who already knows how to social sell, how to show up on LinkedIn, how to do all that stuff. So if that's not a skill set you have right now, right, bone up on that. Again, on our website, we host free webinars all the time about it to teach you how to do it, but make that something that you invest in, because they're looking for it. And then the proof is right there, whether you're a good one or not. They can look at your LinkedIn profile and your activities. So that's one you can't fake in the interview process. Yep.
So Sam, do you even look at resumes anymore? I would say 90% of the time when I'm interviewing someone, I don't even look at their resume. I pull up their LinkedIn profile, and that's what I go off of.
I look at the resume and maybe for a kind of cheeky reason. So I look to see if their resume glows with accolades and then their LinkedIn profile doesn't. And I always ask about that. You'll find that some people are just like, I again posted about this last week, but you'll find some people are reticent to post their accolades. They're just nervous and they're embarrassed. I find that in a lot of the women that I talk to, right? They're like, it just feels so braggadocious when it's really facts of who you are and what you've accomplished. But I look for it as a red flag to say, are you comfortable posting all this stuff in a resume because it's not public? Tell me a little bit about that, right? I see you won Rep of the Year 19 times. Why is that on your LinkedIn profile? Or that, you killed quota these last 7 years, et cetera. Why isn't that on your LinkedIn profile? Talk about that. I look for gaps in that. I also look for changes. So is there something that is missing on a LinkedIn profile, but that is position-wise, but that is on a resume? I think we have a habit of sometimes expanding on the things that we've done really well, or jobs that we've had or whatever, that might not always be the truth. So I like to poke holes in that and make sure we're getting a candidate that has integrity and is telling us the full story.
And counterbalance. Yeah, that's a great point. What advice? So I had a close friend recently. She was applying for a high level, a VP of marketing job at a startup, and they'd given her an offer. And we were kind of going around and around and talking about her strategy in the negotiation for the position. And she was kind of reticent to ask for more salary. She was wondering, hey, how are they going to feel about it? And at one point, I just said to her, listen, as a heterosexual white male, I would be negotiating for more salary and more equity. And that seemed to kind of validate her and help her feel like, okay. But there's Jordan, who 81 cents is her company, which she's a UC Berkeley alum. And she talks about the fact that women on average are paid 81% of what men are. And so we still have this gender disparity gap. Sometimes that you find that women are more reluctant to talk about their accolades, that they can be viewed negatively for that, and also just that in the negotiations themselves. So what are you seeing there, and what advice do you have for women?
I think you're spot on, right? In terms of our pay gap, I think we're at what 83 cents on the dollar now, I think is what I saw from McKinsey's lean in, which stinks.
Okay, so
right?
we got we made 2 cents. We went from 81 to 83. So
woo, we're getting there.
Not there, but heading in the right direction, but not fast enough.
Well, and I think a quick note on that from that same study, right? Talking about things that we can do as a company to also look at that, not only to look at the pay gap, but also to look at how quickly men are being promoted over women. So there's I won't go into this, but a great thing in that McKinsey study that Salesforce did, and found that part of the reason that men were also getting paid more was because they were getting promoted faster, right? Why? So I think just being aware of that's key for any organization. I would say I love negotiating for salary. I think I am the one weird person on this planet that loves it, I'm like, oh my gosh, let's do this stretch, ready to
Let's
go,
do it.
flex. Here's what I would say. So we've got, again, some great shorts about this specifically, but here's what you want to say from a negotiating perspective. When you get somebody who says, tell me about the base salary that you're looking for, right? What's the comp that you're looking for from us? One, remember, I think if most, if not all states now have it as an illegal action to be able to ask what you make now. So if you are asked that, you're welcome to educate them or just say, I don't think I actually have to tell you. I have to think of a right way to say that. But two, when you're asked that question, simply say like, I can't give you a base salary because what really matters is the full package to me. So, you know, base salary, OTE, signing bonus, equity, stock options, you know, what that all looks like, right, 401k match, et cetera. Write a few of those things down so it rolls off the tongue really easily. But when you say that, right, you could offer me $5 of base salary and 78% commission on every single deal that I'm going to take. And I'll take that deal all day long if you're a reputable company that can actually sell, because I know I can sell, right? But
Right.
you also have the signing bonus, the equity, the stock options. And when you also say that to someone, you're also saying, this is what other offers look like. This is what I know other people are making in terms of market offers now. So you've got an opportunity to kind of set that standard of what you expect and then push back on them, because it isn't about the base salary. It's about all of that. If you offered me $10,000, but $100,000 signing bonus, which a friend of mine got $100,000 signing bonus a year ago to join the company.
Wow.
And yeah, as a frontline manager, by the way, I will just say that. I remember responding, you're not even worth that amount of money. And he's like, I know, it's great. But think about that. That's the first piece. And then you get the offer and it's not what you expected, or you wanted more. You think that you are worth more. The market rate is more. I think you transparently come back to them with that. You guys, this is where we live and eat and breathe and sleep and travel and spend time away from our families. We want to make sure that the economics make sense. So I think having a frank conversation and saying, this package looks a little different than I was anticipating, or a little bit different than what I think the market rate is for me with my experience, my skill set, my consistent experience. I was looking for a little bit closer to this. What do we do to kind of shore that up? How can we come to an agreement that's a little bit more mutually favorable? And I think you don't even have to say a number if you don't want to, right? But I think pushing for an extra 10%, 20%, it can be very uncomfortable, but do it, because the worst thing they can say is, this is our max. This is exactly what I did when I was at LinkedIn. I pushed back to try and negotiate for more. And they said, this, we've maxed out in every single band of what we can give you. And at least I knew.
And then, and, again, it goes back to, I have more respect for a salesperson who asks those questions. And, if you're working somewhere that, hey, if I'm not going to negotiate on behalf of myself, am I going to negotiate? Am I going to push on behalf of the company? So
Right.
I think it's a great thing to do. And I think, the way you framed it, that the more you research, and so you come in with knowledge and you can pull in external data points, that it gives so much more credibility, and you're going to be more confident because you're in this position of power to do so.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Sam, let me switch gears again here for a minute, and let me ask you, what is it that got you into sales? How did you decide upon sales as a career? You've had amazing success. You've started your own company. You're employing other people, but what got you on that path? How did you decide on sales?
I was hoodwinked into it, just like the rest of us.
Absolutely. Poli-sci major, didn't go to law school. Yep.
Let's talk about this, tying back to exactly what I talked about. Your network is your net worth. So in 2008, I had a role working in marketing. I was a marketing coordinator for a company here in Washington, D.C. called Silo Smashers. And I then ended up taking on a bigger role, like 3 months into my tenure, like running membership stuff. Now, you guys might remember in 2008, not so great economic times, kind of where we find ourselves here. While I was in that role, though, I started networking with the clients that we had, right? So I started networking with we ran this membership club at our arena here in DC. And I started networking. I said, I'd love to get to know you. I'd love to hear about your career. I'd love to hear how you got started. Would you ever be willing to grab coffee, lunch, et cetera? I wanted to learn, but I wanted to build my network. And so when I did that, I had a lunch set up with the CEO here, Paul Villala in DC, who ran a large recruiting company. And one Friday, I got called into HR at 3 o'clock, and I'm like, must be about my raise and my new title because I'm doing something so totally different than I was before. Not so much. As you guys all know where this is going, that was my layoff, right? That was when I was laid off. So I called Paul and said, hey, I guess I have to cancel our lunch because I just got laid off. And I sat there and I waited. And then he was like, well, I run a recruiting company, so we're still going to have lunch. And I was like,
So we
okay.
shouldn't cancel. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Plus, you don't know where your next meal's coming from, Sam. You should go grab the free lunch.
Exactly. Thanks for paying, Paul.
Yeah.
But you know, they tried to get me into recruiting. It wasn't my passion. And then I got an offer to go into sales. And I'll tell you, what probably a lot of people think before they go into sales is, which is exactly what I thought, right? I was like cold calling and hustling people and selling them my crap so that I can pay for my mortgage. Like, that sounds awful. But what was really awesome was changing the perspective that sales truly is helping somebody else, right? They have a challenge. They're not talking to you for their health. They're talking to you because they want to figure something out, right? They have something that is causing a challenge internally. So I got in there. I found it was a really good fit for my skill set, relationship building, looking to solve challenges, figuring out how to plug the gaps. And I am a connector at heart. For all of you guys who have read the Malcolm Gladwell book, I love connecting other people. I almost like connecting other people more than I like getting a deal, which is a very weird thing for a salesperson to say. But I love it. So thinking of how I can be of help to others, either solving their challenges or introducing them to somebody who can, was such a good fit for me. I think it's also where a lot of my success came from, was capitalizing on that network and just being strategic. So when I took over a few of our law firm accounts, I said, why do these law firms use us for a really small company? What is it? And they're huge, successful firms. Why do they use us? So I reached out to their CMOs, their chief marketing officers, and said, would you take some time? Give me a customer testimonial. Why us? And the first one did, Jim Durham. And he was like, also look at my LinkedIn network. If there's anybody you want to meet, just send them an email and tell them you're a friend of mine. And I was like, okay. And I stayed up all night in Richmond, Virginia, doing that one night and literally sending every email. So thinking about how subject line, hello from a friend of Jim Durham's, thinking about social selling, all that, really catapulted my success forward.
I think that's one of the coolest things. And one of the things I love about sales is the opportunity for experimentation and to do different things and continual learning. Frankly, it's why I'm starting a podcast right now, so I can learn from smart people like you, but also do something that challenges myself and stepping outside my comfort zone. And I've seen that as one of the keys to success in sales. And so, as a final question, I wanted to ask you, and I think you've got two great ones on right behind you that show me you know me, obviously, and then a lot of we spend time here at AirSlate talking about the difference between fear and urgency. So let's not operate out of fear, but we should be operating from a position of urgency, especially right now. And the urgent bird gets the worm, and the first person to contact a customer often wins. But what are the things that you see? What are the attributes you see for top performing salespeople?
I think urgency is huge, right? My mom always said that I was born with a firecracker lit under my bum. I was always going as fast as I possibly could. I think not only is it a critical part of being a great seller, I think it's also a differentiator. Think about how many times we've had to follow up with reps for whatever they said they were going to give us that they didn't buy when they said they were going to give it to us. So showing that urgency, right? Capitalizing on job changes, responding to leads really quickly, capitalizing on when somebody looks at your profilers on your website, calling them fast, all that urgency really pays off. I think also showing that urgency in delivering proposals, right? We're pretty quick. You'll find most of our team, right? I don't write my own proposals anymore, but when I say, our VP of sales or my chief of staff is going to send one to you, I'm like, by end of today, and I squint like that, looking at them while they're both like, because I know they have to then create a proposal today. But that urgency matters, right? Let's catch them when the conversation's still fresh, when they're still motivated, et cetera. I think a couple of other things. One, process sets apart our top performers, right? How do you make sure you never miss a thing? And the thing that keeps me organized is probably different than what keeps you organized. So don't just take somebody else's habit of Salesforce tasks, calendar invites, writing it in a notebook. You have to find what works for you. Right. And then I think the other thing is the ability to build a relationship and just have a conversation, right? Not make everything rigid and salesy and Brian, what are your top challenges? How's it going? What's happening in Walnut Creek today? Tell me about your
Yep.
kids in college, that kind of stuff. What do you think?
I think there's certain things that you can't teach. And so, I look for people, I'll tell you, people who are competitive, who are
Yeah.
driven. Like you have to have that because at the end of the day, I know it's part of what has made you you. And so part of ours has been we got the ping pong table here and it gets pretty fierce. No, good sales reps don't like to lose in anything. And our mantra is competitive yet collaborative. And so, that kind of goes to my no asshole policy that like, hey, I want to hire people that we like to work with and people who want the team to win, but yet they're really aware of where their peers are and they're striving to be the best. And so they'll say, hey, here's what I'm doing. Hey, what are you doing there? And they realize let's push each other. Let's try to go to the next level. And so I think that's a key one. And then the other one is, my favorite pandemic show was Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso.
And,
I knew it. I was going to say it. Oh.
Yep. And the curiosity and be curious, not judgmental. And, I think for a sales rep, instead of asking the question of, what keeps you up at 3 a.m. or what are your top priorities, but when someone genuinely brings a point of view that like, hey, Sam, I talked to other CEOs of 10 to 15 person companies that are similar stage, and here's what they're thinking about. Here are some of their top priorities. Are those similar for you? That's a very different question than just this open-ended, hey, can I get 15 minutes of your time because I'd love to hear what your top priorities are, which I'm sure like me, no.
Exactly. And you think about that exactly, right? Like that message, I'd love to hear what your priorities are. You should know more or less what they are because you sell to us. And I love the way you say that, right? Like, here are the things that are exactly your same buyer persona, ICP, all that are focused on. Are they the same for you? Because then the buyer says, these two are, but not the third. And should they be? And how are you solving that for your clients, right? Then turn the magic on to being consultative, to educating them, to showing them something that they maybe never considered, right? We talk about the example of what I said with LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Are you tracking where your clients are going, right? Are you ignoring the cheapest, easiest, warmest source of leads that you could? No, we're not tracking that. Should we be? Oh my God, yes, immediately. Right. So we open up a whole nother conversation. Our clients don't know what they don't know. We do, though. We're the experts here. So I think the way you position that is so good.
Yeah, it's great when someone can, I'm always happy to talk to people who are going to teach me a new perspective or bring value. And when someone demonstrates that up front, my calendar is a lot more open for that person than someone just throwing out these generic things. And I think, hey, it's what we started with. Show me you know me. Show me who I am, what challenges I might be facing, demonstrate expertise. And I think it works really well. But Samantha, all I could hope and dream for a very first guest. I want to thank you so much for taking the time. It's been such a pleasure. And I'm just so grateful that you've shared some knowledge and spent some time with me.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me be your very first guest. True honor.